So, can you all hear me online? Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji. But sometimes
Okay.
voice is breaking, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So there is internet issue here. The range is slightly less. So okay, I'll continue. So if it's breaking too much, you let me know.
Better to video switch off, Prabhu. If you do in audio, better, I think.
I'll switch off now.
Now, see, Prabhu. 5 minutes we will see. Otherwise, we will switch off the video.
Okay, 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 okay. Okay. Uh, so we are discussing the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So we are almost towards the end of the third chapter. I think 3 verses are left in this third chapter. So basically, the last section of this third chapter, Arjuna is asking this question, my dear, even though we don't want to commit sinful acts, still there is a force that is making us commit the sinful acts. So, what is this force? So, Krishna says this force caste, and this is born of passion. Kamesh, Krodesha, Rajasamudbhav, Mahashapapma, Vidhi Enam. So Krishna says it is lust only that is causing us to perform all these sinful acts. So we discussed how lust is born. Lust is born out of the mode of passion. And Srila Prabhupada gives this example, just like milk. Milk is when it comes in touch with, just 1 minute, let me see if I can just sort this internet out. Just one. Yeah, so right now we have shifted to a new network. Hopefully this should work here. Yeah. So is the voice better, Param Dayalu Prabhu? The voice is
Ah,
better?
okay, Prabhu.
Okay. So in this section, Krishna explains that lust is born out of mode of passion, right? So Prabhupada gives this example: milk, when some sour element, some tamarind or something comes in touch with milk, that milk becomes curd. Similarly, we have this original love for Krishna. When that love for Krishna comes in touch with the mode of passion, that love gets converted into lust. So, through the process of bhakti, we can actually transform lust into prema. That is the process of Krishna consciousness. And Krishna explains ahead how there are different degrees of lust. And he gives 3 examples: dust covering a mirror, smoke covering fire, and womb covering the embryo. So just like there is smoke that covers a fire, that is the least covering, because with little fanning, that original fire can come apart. And the next thicker covering is dust covering the mirror, and the thickest covering is the womb covering the embryo. And in this way, Krishna explains that there are different levels of lust in different living entities. So the trees, the non-moving entities, have the maximum amount of lust, maximum amount of ignorance. So we were discussing this past time that how Nalukuver and Manigriva, the sons of Kuvera, they were cursed to become trees by Narada because they had too much kam vasna. And Prabhupada writes that if there are trees, that means these living entities have been too lusty in their previous life. And human beings have the least amount of lust. That means there is lust, kam vasna is there, but then this kam vasna can be transformed into love if through proper uh, guidance. Just like if there is smoke covering the fire, if there is sufficient fanning, the right amount of fanning is there by an expert, then that spark can actually turn into a fire. That smoke can go away. Similarly, under proper guidance, when we practice Krishna consciousness, we can convert lust into love. And then Krishna explains the quality of lust. He says, Kama rupena kaunteya dushpurena alanena cha. So this lust is compared to a fire which is never satisfied. So if you have fire, if you put kerosene into fire, will the fire get satisfied? It will burn further. So in our heart, this lust is compared to fire that's always burning day and night. Dibanishi hiya jwale. Right? And we are trying to put more sense gratification. What will happen? The more the fire will burn. And scriptures are filled with so many stories. We have the example of Ravan, who had so much lust in him. And the more he was trying to fulfill that lust, it was increasing further. So if we want to conquer lust, the only way is stop feeding it. The more we feed, the more aggressive it will get. Just like bad habits, the more we feed these bad habits, the more aggressive it gets. And then Krishna explains where all lust is situated. So just like if you have to conquer an enemy, so lust is compared to our greatest enemy, Vairi. So if you have to conquer lust, we have to first know where the enemies are, right? So Krishna explains where is lust situated. Right now, the lust is situated in our senses, in our mind, in our intelligence. Everything is contaminated with lust. So we can't even trust our own intelligence because that is also contaminated with lust. So what we should do? How can we overcome lust? Krishna explains from text 41. So we discussed till text 40 last time. So we'll continue from 41. Tasmatvam indriyani yado niyamya bharatashrabha papmanam prajihiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. So word to word, tasmat, therefore, tvam, you, indriyani, senses, ado, in the beginning, niyamya, by regulating, Bharata Shrabha, O chief among the descendants of Bharata, Papmanam, the great symbol of sin, Prajahi, curb, he certainly, enam, this, Jnana of knowledge, Vijnana, and scientific knowledge of the pure soul, Nashanam, the destroyer. Translation is like this. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So Krishna is saying, in the beginning only, ado means in the beginning. So Prabhupada explains here that, just like someone enters into our house, there are different levels of entry. First there is a gate, then there is door, second door, like that. So similarly, for lust to enter, lust first enters through our senses. That's the first gate. And then there is mind and then intelligence. Once intelligence becomes lusty, then that person is completely finished. Right? So best is to stop lust, stop this enemy at the entry level only. So therefore Krishna says, Tasmatvam indriyani ado. We need to control the senses. So if we control the senses, then we are saved from lot of problems. Because once it enters the system, very difficult to bring it out. Just like this COVID virus now, best is to wear mask and protect yourself. Once the virus enters, and the more deeper it enters, the more difficult it will get. right? Recovery time will be more longer. So similarly, once we allow this virus of lust to enter a system, then it takes a long time. If anyone has experienced virus entering a computer, by the time you install antivirus and do all those things, it takes practically a day only to do it. Similarly, if lust enters the system, it becomes very, very difficult. So best is to control the senses, regulate the senses. So we need to work on the senses. Gandhiji's three monkeys. If we can control our senses, everything will be much more easier for us. So Prabhupada explains here that this lust not only destroys knowledge, but it destroys self-realization also. Jnana Vijnana Nashanam. So this is another quality of lust. Knowledge is also destroyed and self-realization is also gone. So in today's age, where everyone is bombarded with so much propaganda of lust, very difficult for anyone to develop any proper knowledge. No proper knowledge only. You see, even if a student is studying in school or college, you know, once that person gets attracted to different directions, to different temptations, he can't focus on his studies. That is why in traditional days, student life means brahmachari life. Because if you're not following brahmacharya, you can't not spiritual studies. You can't even focus on your material studies. You can't even become materially successful. You will waste your life like this only. Right? So lust is the destroyer of knowledge. If you have to conquer lust, if you want to develop knowledge, first is to not give in to lusty propaganda. Because once you give in, you can't focus on what you're supposed to do. Your goal in life will go for a toss. And self-realization is absolutely not possible. That is why in every path, whether it is Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, whichever path of yoga, Patanjali Yoga system, Brahmacharya is inevitable. You have to practice Brahmacharya. Without that, you just can't focus on Krishna. So therefore, Krishna is saying here, if you give in to lust, both knowledge and self-realization are lost. Right? And Prabhupada quotes Bhagavatam, Jnanam paramam guhyam me yad vijnana samanvitam gnanam gaditam maya. So Krishna says, the knowledge of the self and super self is very confidential and mysterious. But such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if explained with their various aspects by the Lord Himself. So to gain knowledge about the Atma and God is not easy. But when Krishna explains, personally comes and explains to the Bhagavad Gita, then we can understand it. So therefore, the living entities, all of us, are meant to serve Krishna. We are all meant to serve Krishna, but we have forgotten that relationship, that eternal relationship, and we have come here trying to be enjoyers. So material consciousness means I am the enjoyer. That's all. As Srila Prabhupada would say, I am the Lord of all I survey. So everyone wants to become the Lord and Master. That is material consciousness. But in spiritual consciousness, we understand that we are servants of Krishna. This is called Krishna consciousness. We are keeping Krishna in the center. Srila Prabhupada one time was giving a lecture, and one reporter asked Srila Prabhupada, what is the aim of life? Prabhupada said, enjoyment. And this reporter felt very happy. Enjoyment. Prabhupada is also sanctioned. But Prabhupada said, not your enjoyment, Krishna's enjoyment. So devotee uses desires to satisfy Krishna. So when a normal person goes out in the world, whatever he sees, what does he see? He sees, how can I enjoy this? How can I enjoy this? Anything he sees, he will see in that terms only. How can I get it? Right? So when a devotee goes and sees the world, he sees in terms of how can this be used in Krishna's service? Okay. So a devotee may be passing through some market. When he sees things in the market, he sees, this is good. We can use this for deity Shringar. Right? He's thinking in terms of Krishna only. So same desires, but a devotee is dovetailing it. So Prabhupada says that this consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. Using all our desires, propensities in Krishna service. So from the very beginning, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness, and thereby one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. So from the very beginning means actually from the childhood. So in fact, Prabhupada explains here, this is something that's very important. When love of Godhead deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to normal condition. What is a normal condition? A normal condition is we are supposed to be in the spiritual world serving Krishna, Krishna Prem, right? But now coming to this material world, that Prem, that love has become lust. So in this world, whenever you hear the word love, there is hardly any love in this world. It's all lust only, right? People will say, I love you, but actually there is no love in this world. Pure love may be there, very few incidences where mother's love for the child, but generally in this world the pure love is not there. That pure love was there in our hearts in our relationship with Krishna, but coming to this world, that pure love has become lust. So Prabhupada explains here, when love of God is deteriorated into lust, it is very difficult to return back to the normal condition. It's actually very difficult, right, to go back to that original stage of love. But if one is educated from the very beginning, so that's why Prabhupada says here, one has to learn the science of Krishna consciousness from childhood. Kaumare achare pragyo. So Prahlad Maharaj says, when should one start practicing bhakti? As a small child. When a small child starts to practice, by the time he becomes a youth, an adult, he becomes very strong in his Krishna consciousness. He can do something, a substantial service. Today is the disappearance day of Madhvacharya. Tomorrow is the disappearance day of Ramanujacharya. These personalities, their bhakti started when they were small children. Right? Madhvacharya, he took sannyas when he was 12 years old. Ramanuja, he took sannyas, I think, when he was 16 or 18 years old. Right? As small children, they started Krishna consciousness. That's why in their lifetime, they could achieve such immense contribution they did to the society, to the movement. So, best is to start Krishna consciousness from the beginning. That is why Srila Prabhupada was very focused on developing gurukuls and teaching children. Because when children pick it up at the right age, they can do great service. They can deliver themselves, they can deliver their forefathers, and they can actually be great acharyas in the world. So Prabhupada therefore says here, from the very beginning, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness. So if we have come to Krishna consciousness a little later, we are already late. Therefore, we should take it up seriously. And it is a duty to pass this message to children. Right? So, Prabhupada's own example, because his father gave him the seed of Krishna consciousness when he was a small child. Practically, as a small child, he was doing everything. What we are doing in ISKCON now, Prabhupada was doing everything as a child. Deity worship, prasadam, Rath Yatra, everything. Reading Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So when he became Krishna conscious, when he met his spiritual master, it was so easy for him. So therefore, he is stressing this point that from the very beginning, one has to do it. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotional service. So Prabhupada first says that best is if someone can start bhakti as a small child. But someone may say, Are, I have come in this movement way later. Is there any hope for me? Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful. The process of bhakti is so powerful that it can convert our lust into love. So we are all supposed to be lovers of God, right? We are all supposed to be mad after God. So lust in this world literally means madness. People just become mad, right? A boy and a girl, when they are in love with each other, practically, they just keep thinking about each other continuously. So we are supposed to be in such love with God. And that is possible even for a late beginner if we follow the process of Krishna consciousness. Very sincerely, if we follow, then in this lifetime only it is possible. So Prabhupada says, so from any stage of life, or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service to the Lord, and turn lust into love of Godhead, the highest perfectional stage of human life. So, whatever your stage may be, whether you're a child, youth, adult, old person, whatever your stage may be, as soon as you understand the urgency. So this is very, very important to understand that Krishna consciousness is an urgency. It is something that's very important. If you don't do it, then it's going to get more difficult. You see, right now only we are in 2022. Right now only Kali Yuga is so difficult to practice Krishna consciousness. Now, what it was 20 years before, the situation is not now. It's not that easy now. Even though I remember when uh, I came to Krishna consciousness, there was no internet. I mean, we didn't have to hear lectures. We would hear lectures from those cassettes. कैसेट्स के साथ लेक्चर सुनते थे वही कैसेट को बार बार सुनते थे I remember I've heard one lecture of Maharaj for at least like 50-60 times, same cassette, because you have to wait for 2-3 months till you get the next cassette. Some devotee will come and give you that cassette. Right? Now, someone sent a message that ISKCON Desire Tree, Hare Krishna TV, they are like almost 30-40,000 lectures, 50-60,000 lectures online. This facility was not there before. But even with all this facility, it's difficult to practice Krishna consciousness now because Kali Yuga is taking its toll. Right? Imagine now 20-30 years later, it's going to be more difficult, very, very difficult to practice Krishna consciousness. So better we understand the urgency of this and take to Krishna consciousness seriously so that in this lifetime only we can try to convert lust into pure love. And this is the perfectional stage of human life. We have got this human form of life only for this purpose. Which purpose? To actually achieve that Krishna Prem. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhya Kabo Noy Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Kariya Uday. We have got this human form of life to achieve Krishna Prem. And without that Krishna Prem, our life is useless. Prema Vina Vyartha Daridra Jivan Dasakari Vetan Mohre Deha Premadhan. So it is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita that without Krishna Prem, our life is just poverty stricken. Prema Vina Vyartha Daridra Jivan. We may have wealth, we may have so many things, but if our heart is empty, if we don't have love of God, then we are literally poor, poverty stricken. But we have in the scriptures examples of people like Sudama, literally beggars on the street, but they were so rich in the heart. One time, Lord Chaitanya, he had one of his very intimate disciple and devotee, his name was Sridhar Kolavecha. So in Navdeep in Mayapur, Sridhar Kolavecha. Kolavecha means, in Bengali means a banana leaf seller. So Sridhar, around his house, there would be like bananas, plants that would come. He would go and sell banana leaves. I mean, how much money will you make by selling banana leaves? Hardly anything. And Lord Chaitanya, that too, as a small child, Nimai Pandit, he would come and bargain with Sridhar Kolavecha and take those banana leaves almost for free. And with that little money that Sridhar got, half of that money he would use it in the service of Ganga. He would do Ganga Puja with that money. And little money he had, that's all. So this time when we went for the Mayapur Yatra, we couldn't go to this house of Sridhar Kolavecha. But this house is worth seeing. You know what this house is? In the middle of a field, there is one hut. And when Sridhar Kolavecha would stay in this hut, when it would rain, practically from every part of the hut, water would come in. That was the condition of his hut. One small hut. All his clothes were so much torn, he would take the two torn parts of his cloth, tie it together. So in his entire cloth, there were more knots. Everywhere knotted, tied it. Right? And he had one bartan outside his house. That bartan he would use for drinking, for cooking, for taking bath. One aluminum bartan, that's all. Lord Chaitanya one time came and told Sridhar Kolavecha, you are actually cheating the world. You have such great wealth, You're not showing the world. And Sridhar Kolavecha was thinking, my dear Lord, what wealth I have, I'm so poor. But Lord Chaitanya showed that Sridhar Kolavecha had the greatest wealth. And what was that? He had love of God. Right? So the aim of our life is to achieve this love of God. For that, we have to take to the process of Krishna consciousness sincerely, because the process is very powerful. If we follow this process, we will experience this true treasure, this Krishna Prem, Golokera Prema Dana Harinama Sankirtan. We'll read text 42. Indriyani parani ahor indriyebhya param manah manastu para buddhir yo buddhe parastu sa. Word to word. Indriyani, senses, parani, superior, ahu, are said, indriyebhya, more than the senses, param, superior, manaha, the mind, manasaha, more than the mind, tu, also, para, superior, buddhi, intelligence, yaha, who, buddhe, more than the intelligence, parata, superior, tu, but, saha, he. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses, intelligence still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So Krishna is explaining the entire makeup of our system, right? So Gita is actually a very, very scientific book. You will not find this, even in the most intelligent of this world, the greatest doctors and philosophers, scientists, you will not find this under. Krishna is explaining here systematically what is the hierarchy. So Krishna is saying here, superior to dull matter, Indriyani Parani Ahu. So this world is dull matter, Jada. Jada means dead matter. Superior to dead matter are our senses. We have the five senses: eyes, nose, ears, tongue, touch, skin. Right? We have the five senses. So superior to dull matter is the senses. Higher than the senses is mind. Higher than mind is intelligence, and still higher than intelligence is the Atma, the soul, or ourselves. So this verse is very important for us if we want to conquer lust. Because Krishna has explained till this point that lust has actually captured our senses, our mind, and our intelligence. So the only way we can overcome lust is when we situate ourselves on that spiritual platform. Only when we come to that spiritual platform, then only we can overcome this lusty mind, intelligence, and so Prabhupada explains here, when the soul makes a direct connection with Krishna, right? When the soul connects with the super soul, then the soul can overcome this entire system, right? So Prabhupada explains here that Param Drishtva Nivartate. If the mind is engaged in transcendental service, there is no chance of being engaged in lower property. Right? So if we can find higher engagement, higher taste, that's why it's called and it's called higher taste. So all of us, definitely we need taste in life. We need rasa. Right? But right now we are all experiencing material rasa. Once we experience spiritual rasa, we will give up the lower taste. As long as experience spiritual rasa, material rasa will be pulling us. But as soon as we experience a higher taste, we will forget this. Therefore, it's important that we get glimpses of those higher tastes. Once we get it, we will forget all this. So, Krishna is explaining here that when we situate ourselves on the spiritual form, when we use our senses, mind, and it's in Krishna's service. So, it is important for us that we connect all our faculties in Krishna's service. Just like we have the example of Ambrish Maharaj. Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunadu Varnane. So Ambrish Maharaj used his mouth, his tongue in glorification of Krishna. He would constantly do kirtan. He used his ears in hearing about Krishna. With his eyes, he would see the deities of Krishna. With his smell, he would smell the flowers and tulsi offered to the Lord. With his tongue, he would taste prasadam. Right? With his hands, he would clean the temple of the Lord. With his legs, he would walk to places of pilgrimage. He would do tirth yatras. So when we engage our senses in the Lord's service, when we engage the mind in constantly thinking about Krishna and his service, right? How can I constantly make Krishna more happy? Just like a businessman, na? A businessman, wherever he goes, he thinks only in terms of money. Right? Where I will get money here, where I will get money there. Always money conscious. That's why they are so successful. Wherever they see, whoever they meet, they only think in terms of money. So devotees should be always thinking like that. My service to Krishna, how I can improve my service to Krishna, how I can make it better. So in this way, we can use the mind in Krishna service. And then with intelligence, we can plan for Krishna. Right? We can think, what can I do for Krishna? Krishna has kept that option open. We can do unlimited services. When disciples would come to Srila Prabhupada and ask him, Prabhupada, what should we do? What kind of service we should do? Prabhupada would ask them, what do you all want to do? Krishna has given you intelligence. You think, you use your intelligence and think, what do you want to do for Krishna? Krishna's service is unlimited. Why should I tell you? So Prabhupada wanted independently thoughtful people. You all think, use your intelligence, think about Krishna. Right? So if we use all our faculties in Krishna service, then we can be situated on the spiritual platform. And from the spiritual platform, we can actually conquer lust and we can avoid falling down into this material world. Krishna concludes this section, the last verse. This is the last verse of the Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana dahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Evam thus, buddhe to intelligence, param superior, buddhva knowing, samstabhya by studying, atmanam the mind, atmana by deliberate intelligence, jahi conqueror, shatrum the enemy, mahabaho almighty armed, Kamarupam in the form of lust, Durasadam formidable. Translation. Thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence. O mighty armed Arjuna, one should study the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness. And thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Each word that Prabhupada has used here is filled with meaning, loaded completely. So Prabhupada is saying here, this is Krishna's translation, that first one should know oneself to be transcendental. So if you want to conquer lust, first thing is to be, at least theoretically understand our identity, that I am not the mind. The mind may get agitated, the senses may keep pulling us in different directions, but I am not the mind, I am not the senses. I am spirit soul. Aham Brahmasmi. I am spirit soul. So first one should be situated on the transcendental platform. Right? One should at least have this theoretical understanding that I am spirit soul. And one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. So this word is very important. Evam buddhe param buddhva. So one can conquer the mind not by intelligence, by spiritual intelligence. There is a difference between both. So many times we think that we will conquer the mind by intelligence, but our intelligence is also material only. What will our material intelligence help us? Right? It cannot help us. We need spiritual intelligence. Therefore, reading Gita, reading Bhagavatam is important. Gita Bhagavatam will give us intelligence. We may think we are very intelligent, we may have PhD degree, this, that, so many things, but that is all material intelligence. It will not help us. Just like the Bhagavatam says, if someone is drowning in an ocean or in a river, if that fellow is wearing a very heavy helmet, what will happen? He will drown faster, that's all. Similarly, material intelligence is like the load. It's a weight on the head. It will drown us further. So we need spiritual intelligence, and that is Krishna consciousness. So the only way to overcome lust is to be situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness, being situated on the platform of Atma by following the process of Bhakti. And then Krishna says, Jahi Shatru Mahabaho Kamarupam Dadashadam. By spiritual strength, my dear Arjuna, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So Krishna is calling Arjuna Mahabaho, greatly powerful. So the Lord is telling Arjuna, you are very powerful. You have conquered so many external enemies. Your track record is unlimited. You have defeated Indra, you have defeated Shiva, you have defeated all the demigods. But a real warrior is one who conquers the enemy within. Anyone can conquer external enemies. That's not great. The definition of greatness is one who has conquered the enemy within. That is why previously sannyasis were known as Maharaj. So when a sannyasi, when a great saintly person would come, even kings would fall at their feet. Why? Because a king has conquered the external world, but this person has conquered the inner world. Which is more difficult? Conquering the inner world is more difficult. Right? Fighting with the enemy within is more difficult. So this is our greatest enemy. So we may think that we have so many external enemies, but our enemy is within only. And we have to conquer the enemy within and actually become strong. And how this will happen? By spiritual strength. Coming Monday is Nityanand Trayodashi. So Nityanand Prabhu, Balaramji is the source of all strength. Balaram means Baladev, the source of all strength. So Balaramji represents Guru Tattva. So when we take shelter of Guru, when we take shelter of the previous Acharyas, by their strength, we can conquer lust. Otherwise, it's not possible. With our own strength, it is impossible. We need spiritual strength. And spiritual strength has to come by the mercy of the Lord, by the mercy of great souls. So, Prabhupada explains here that the desire for lording it over this material world, sense gratification, is the greatest enemy for the conditioned soul. This desire to enjoy, bus, is because of this we are caught in this world. That's all. So, by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one has to control the mind and senses. So, we are in a very precarious situation. We are in a very difficult situation where we are caught in this material body, where we have senses, we have the mind, and we are trying to practice bhakti. So it's actually very difficult because we are trying to go towards Krishna, but the senses, mind are pulling us completely away from Krishna. This tug of war is solid, and devotees get really stressed out. So sometimes the stress that the devotee experiences is sometimes a little more than what the materialist experience. Because for materialistic people, there is no stress only. They just go with the flow. They're just enjoying the senses. But once you start opposing, then actually the force starts to come. Then you feel that pressure. Right? But that's how we become stronger in life. Just like, people who go for gym, bodybuilding, the more you push yourself against a force, your muscles build up. Right? Similarly, the more we can tolerate the pushing and pullings of the senses, and we stay focused in Krishna consciousness, then only we can overcome. So Prabhupada says that we may not be able to overcome lust suddenly. By gradually developing Krishna consciousness, naturally real intelligence will come, real wisdom will come, and then one will be situated in one's pure identity. Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. This is the essence of all knowledge. Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavama Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. So this is real intelligence. Understanding that I am a servant of Krishna. Krishna is the aim in my life. I have to achieve Krishna in this life itself. So when we work like this, when we get trained in Krishna consciousness through the medium of a spiritual master, then we can achieve success. So today is the disappearance day of Madhvacharya. Today morning, Gopal Swaranpu gave the pastimes of Madhvacharya. So Madhvacharya is such a great soul. Vayuputra, is so strong in spiritual life. Right? He would give so much hope and conviction to his disciples. Just looking at these personalities, just by thinking about these personalities, one derives so much strength. And Madhvacharya, through his own life, he was also very humble and he followed his own guru. What Krishna is explaining here, what Prabhupada is explaining here, is what all the acharyas have done. Madhvacharya, even when he wrote a commentary on Bhagavad Gita, he walked all the way from Udupi till Badrinath. So now, in May we are going for this Char Dham Yatra, but we'll be going half by flight and some by bus. Can you imagine walking from Karnataka till Badrinath? Right? Madhvacharya walked all the way to show his manuscript to Vyasdev, to get approval of Vyasdev, because he understood that only by the blessings of Guru one can progress in spiritual life. Even though Madhvacharya was a Guru already with thousands of disciples, he was still under the shelter of his Guru. And the same applies to Ramanujacharya. Tomorrow is the disappearance day of Ramanuja. Ramanujacharya had thousands of disciples, but Ramanuja himself had a couple of gurus. He had 4, 5 Siksha gurus. And when he would go in front of his gurus, he would be so humble. He would listen to them for months together, render menial service. Because only when we take shelter of our spiritual master, only when we gain spiritual strength from them, Ami to Kangala, Krishna Krishna boli, dhai tava pache pache. Krishna se tomara, Krishna dite paro, tomara shakati ache. Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings in a song, my dear Vaishnava, my dear Guru, you have Krishna. I don't have Krishna. Ami to Kangala. I am completely poor. I don't have any love for Krishna. My heart is filled with so much lust. Only when you give me mercy, then only I can develop strength. So this is the mood through which all the acharyas are showing us when we follow this path of Krishna consciousness sincerely, the path of bhakti, surrendering to the spiritual master, learning proper Krishna consciousness from them, then we can overcome this lust, and then one day we can actually develop this pure love for Krishna, Krishna Prem, and enter into the spiritual world. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Anyone has any questions? Those who are online and those who are offline. So today we are at Vaibhav Kalamgodkar and Aparna Kalamgodkar Mataji's house. So they have got a new flat for themselves. So we are having some small satsang, the first satsang. Anyone has any questions, any comments? Those who are online. So tomorrow morning and day after, we'll be having like a 2-day Bhagavatam session on pastimes of Ramanujacharya. Actually, I wanted to do for 4 or 5 days, but let's see, at least we'll do for 2 days. So Ramanujacharya's pastimes are amazing, super excellent pastimes. So tomorrow morning 8:30 and Saturday morning 8:30, 2 days we will do Ramanujacharya's pastime. And I think Sunday morning Baldev is giving Bhagavatam class, and then Monday morning we will celebrate Nityananda Trayodashi. We'll have glories of Nityananda Prabhu, Bhagavatam class, like that. Okay. So if there are no questions, can we end for today online?